Now, like most people, I have a healthy distrust of the French, but I was really impressed by this movie.
Welcome to episode 3 of Film Club. This week we're going to be talking about Man Bites Dog, a 1992 French indie movie directed by Rémi Berveau and Andrei Kravtchenko, starring Benoit Poelvoorde in the role of Ben, the serial killer. So the movie is a mockumentary that follows around a serial killer, Ben. Basically, he gives his opinion on culture, society, day-to-day life, and then also kills people. And the documentarians document his every move and just see his methods and gradually become more and more complicit in his crimes. It is a dark comedy that gets darker and darker and darker and stays very French throughout. Steve, you picked this movie. You had seen it before. I think you kind of just stumbled upon it. Why did you pick this movie?
I've always had an interest in what filmmakers can do on a shoestring budget. When I was kind of researching it a bit, the directors and the actors seem to have been primarily the producers as well. It was only about $200,000 worth of budget. Considering that, I was really impressed that they're able to make an entire story, even if it does seem a little bit disjointed. I think that's just kind of...
A little bit.
I think that's kind of just the existential sort of nature that the movie's kind of rolling with. Wandering through the world as though it doesn't really have a point is definitely seems to be the sentiment of the movie. If we're doing a film review, I think that's a decent film. I'm sure a lot of people haven't seen it, and I think it's probably something that a lot of people would be really into.
I found this movie, I don't know, in 2 words, wonderfully grotesque. It keeps drawing you in with these very candid, very personal, and kind of like, oh, you're starting to get to know this person, and all of a sudden it takes a sick or twisted turn, or it'll cut to gunshots over and over again. And I was pretty amazed with how the movie made you somehow like or be interested in someone who's just so morally disgusting. It was refreshing.
Dan, thoughts?
Well, I definitely liked the movie. I didn't feel like it was the most entertaining movie. It was kind of disjointed in a way that it couldn't draw me into the film as a whole. But there were many moments I felt were iconic, like the scene with the grandma dying. A lot of the dark humor really had me, it was right up my alley. I think the thing that makes me not want to watch it again would be just the whole disjointed nature of it. There wasn't enough build-up over time, and then there was just little build-ups that leave me puzzled by the end. But I definitely really like the bleak nature of it, the dark comedy, the violence.
Yeah, it comes at an interesting angle with the, like you mentioned, the disjointed, because it does definitely feel like the movie seems to just more or less pick up at exactly when the film crew starts following this around. So this Benoit protagonist, you don't really have any sense of what his life was or might have caused him to go down this road. You get a really strange kind of glimpse into this dude who, it seems like, I guess murder has just always been his way. This is what he sees as his job, and that's kind of a recurring joke in it, right? Mm-hmm. That he's not a complete frothing at the mouth psychopath. He's pretty calculating in everything he's doing, ridiculous as it all seems to be. His family's involved, and they're all relatively normal things. There's not any weird gag where it's his dad used to keep him in the basement and put out lit cigarettes on him or something. His parents all seem really normal, well-adjusted people, and they're just oh yeah, he was the sweetest little boy. And just talking about how he always loved to laugh, and just they have no idea of what he really is, right? His
personal life outside of his just violence is it's so charming. He's funny. He can laugh. He cracks jokes all the time. Sometimes he gets a little out of hand. Then people are oh yeah, calm down. But that's how people know him as. But then immediately in the next scene, he's just chasing someone down, choking them out, or shooting them. And he's like, "What are you doing, you idiots?"
I was always questioning whether the people around him sensed or knew anything. It's nobody had any sense except for when he shot that one person. The acquaintance of one of his girlfriend, and then they just carried on like nothing happened.
At the dinner table?
Yeah. That was something where it's okay, so does everybody know?
I think it's implied. The older lady that he hangs out with. I think it's implied that she at least knows he's killed some people, because he makes a mention of she got kicked out of her old apartment because they were because they were gentrifying it or whatever the scenario was. Two of these construction workers are being real dicks about it, and he's like, yeah, well, they're definitely not going to fuck with anyone else.
That's right. I went and had a good talking to them. The style of the filming, you're so aware that it's a hand cam, but that just blends in because you get these really kind of organic and natural scenes.
You get used to it.
You get used to it, so the camera's kind of like you.
I did like it overall, basically because it's something new, and like Andrei said, it wasn't formulaic. It wasn't in the vein of a regular Hollywood movie. I was also kind of impressed and inspired by the indie spirit of the film and how they, made it mockumentary style. That is pretty wise if you have a low budget. And I found like the filming and the kind of crappy low budget quality, I got used to it. I did find it disjointed, and that kind of made me lose interest in whatever momentum it was building. It kind of like lost it for me at times, and it was a short movie, but it felt way longer than it actually was. There were some very good moments. I did think Benoit's acting was strong throughout. His ability to actually make you kind of empathize a little bit and watch him and think of him as anything other than a monster was impressive. And it was a comedy about a serial killer. You have to at least be somewhat existential to do that, right? Because if there's no inherent meaning in life, then sure, anything can be funny. It made me think a lot and reflect on where the line is, or there's not really a line. How there's not really a line in comedy. I also really loved the scene where Ben forces the elderly lady to have a heart attack, and he's explaining very calmly after.
What he said, he's like, see, as soon as I came in here, I noticed the medication, which just means she has a heart condition. So he's like, I just scared the crap out of her and gave her a heart attack. And she's just like, trying to swats her away.
Yeah. Right, like that's hilarious. Like, I found that.
That was probably the favorite.
Yeah, it's so morbid, but it's somehow like, you start laughing at it.
And just how he's like explaining very calmly and like excited and with like almost like good-heartedness about noticing the medication and how that influenced him. He's just like, yeah, no, I picked up on that.
You start to notice how professional he is about it, how daft and clever.
Yeah, it's the happiness of a man who is very pleased with his performance that day at work. Yeah. Like if you were a CEO coming out of whatever, like closing a deal, he would have been like, I killed it today. That was his kill.
No, exactly.
Noticing the heart medication, being like, oh, I can scream this lady to death. Huge. There is sort of a plot linearly. It does begin and it ends with him dying, but everything else is more or less in between, and it's more or less disjointed. You don't even necessarily know if these events are happening sequentially because it's all coming from this recording.
The literal title of the movie from the French is it happened in your neighborhood. Yeah. And the kind of way the movie starts with them on a train, someone gets murdered. Like, people get murdered everywhere. In their apartment, out in the open, out in like abandoned buildings, in like a train car. So it just shows you how hidden this violence is, right? And almost every day it is to these people. They kill their sound guy twice. Or he gets killed.
That dead kills me every time.
The first time he dies, you hear like the microphone like feedback and cut out. And then there's a little bit of video footage without mic until the dude picks up. Like, one of the other guys picks up and turns the sound back on, and it actually, like, it incorporates that, and it does that at the end of the movie.
What that reminded me of was Spinal Tap, another mockumentary, where the drummer keeps dying and they replace him. Like, just how in documentary crews, how there's the one expendable member, and, like, that's probably been done.
Yeah, film people. Is that a joke that the sound guy is replaceable?
Trailer Park Boys who get shot.
That's true. Another mockumentary
by cops
too.
Or something. I don't know. Or I forgot.
Yeah,
maybe it was by Cyrus. He's a dick.
He's Cyrus.
Yeah.
Another point I wanted to ask you guys about. Very often, like, this person as what you'd call, like, in classical terms, Epicurean. So he lives for enjoyment of pleasures. So if you notice, he kills, and then he goes and he works up appetites. So they often are eating
Yeah,
dinner.
let's go
They're
have
drinking.
mussels after, yeah.
He invites them out to mussels, but they are at restaurants before or after. He does a lot of killing, and they also like run a train on this fucking woman, this couple that they ended up having sex with, right? So it's just kind of like it mixes in all these kind of like perverted appetites get mixed together for this person.
That scene was fucked.
That scene was fucked, and like I was just kind of like watching it, like
one of the film crew guys who they make fuck. If you look at it after he finishes, you look at his face. He just clearly did not enjoy that. He was like so embarrassed, and it was like I hated doing that. You just see his face for a moment,
but he still did it anyway
because they're afraid of Benoit. Right?
I didn't even take that as an interpretation that they're afraid of him. He's so charming and seductive, and they're kind of those people that. They're from the start. They're working on some pretty dicey territory, right? Because they're following around a serial killer.
Is he really at the end of it gonna just let them go with that footage?
That's right. Yeah,
right?
I was thinking, like,
right?
Because they never really explained what.
But he loved
like
telling people about it. But you think in his plan, like in his head, he's just like, all right. Before they actually release it, I'm just gonna kill them.
It's just
that was
and keep the footage for myself.
You don't know where they really stand on it.
Both the parties have delusions about what this reality is supposed to be, right?
Yeah, well, I think at first they get gradually more implicated through the movie. So if you accept that there's at least a vaguely linear sequence of events in this, I think at first they definitely think they're doing something interesting and edgy, and then they realize you can't do something like this and not become part of it, right? They do it pretty subtly. At first, they're helping him move bodies, and like as he's teaching them to dispose bodies. And then the second thing that they do pretty noticeably and pretty strangely, he's like, "Hey, check out that guy's dick," because he's pretty racist through the whole movie, and he ends up killing a black guy at one point. He makes some point.
He didn't just kill this guy,
of killing two Muslims. And burying them in the cement, and specifically facing them, making sure they were facing towards
Mecca,
which really made me laugh.
What are the crew members gonna say that are gonna like flip them over the edge? Like, are they walking on eggshells here? Are they friends with them?
At what point is this guy gonna snap? That's a good point.
Yeah, because he gets mad at them for not helping him enough,
and he has a pretty bad temper too, right? He'll lash out all of a sudden.
Yeah, like if he's gonna kill random people he doesn't even know, what's gonna stop him from killing one of his crew members? Like,
final thoughts on Man Bites Dog.
Above and beyond any other movie I can ever think of, this is a
cut. That's it.
This is definitely a film that was carried by the performance of one actor. Like the movie's about 95 minutes, give or take. The dude who plays Benoit is probably on screen for, I would say, at least 80 of them or something like that. And he absolutely steals the spotlight anytime he's talking. His dips between his mania and his pride in what he takes as normalized work and gainful employment in his own head of murdering people, and just like his funny racist opinions or kind of his perspective on architecture and culture and all that. I can't really recall a movie I've seen where one actor is so integral to the entire thing functioning and who does such a bang-up job.
I don't think I would willingly watch this movie again just because it might put me to sleep. There are too many points where it just loses momentum and it doesn't have structure. I think it could have really benefited from actually having some plot points to move the story along. But again, that might have been kind of the point. The actor who played Ben did a great job. Very funny, charismatic, just giving his opinions on mundane shit as if he wasn't a serial killer. I liked it. It was original, kind of slow and boring at points.
If I can go back to something Steve said at the start with being interested in what indie directors or producers can do on shoestring budgets. And if I may add a slightly ironic statement to it, the movie's surprisingly colorful for how bleak and just basic it is.
You never feel like you're seeing the edge of the camera, right? It's a literal film. It almost feels like you're walking through their world, right? And you don't see the edges of it at all.
I enjoyed it. I feel like I didn't enjoy it as much entertainment-wise, And that was due to, as we said before, like the disjointedness of it. Going on to things that I really did like about this, where the dark humor was spot on during some scenes. There was probably about 3 or 4 scenes that were just like iconic kind of in my mind. They'll affect me when I'm thinking of scripts that I want to write in the future, you know?
Can you
like,
name them?
Yeah. I'll rename them. The grandma scene,
Yeah.
where he kills the grandma by giving her a heart attack and then explains how he planned on doing that when he saw her heart medication. The scene where he checks the black guy's dick and then confirms that yes, he has a big dick, and goes on to make a bunch of more like semi-racist statements about other people he's killed, as if that was just like a secondary to like the actual murders that he committed. But then through like as the movie as a whole, like I just felt like I could pack it up every time a scene was done. Like I could be like, oh well, that was cool.
Yeah.
Time to go now. I need to go
What
do
I
something
think
else.
that almost speaks to is how incredibly high, like how incredibly funny the movie is capable of being, even though you almost wish that they went for more of that, because the movie doesn't. The movie doesn't feel like it actually follows the structure of a comedy, or it doesn't feel like it's particularly trying to be funny to me, despite the fact that it is. Like there's no effort to the comedy. What it is it's just based on watching some of the most bleak, horrific shit, and if you have that darkened kind of sense of humor, it is like it's really going to tickle you. But it almost, like, for the people who are going to find this funny, I feel like there are these 4 or 5 scenes that are going to stick out, and you feel like there was so much potential here for so much more of that brilliance, right?
Yes.
It'd be interesting to see how that movie was written or storyboarded, because it does feel like they would have, it feels like they would come up with a few situations like, okay, let's go out and film them. Because it's just kind of like skits almost, right? Just be like, okay, today we're going to catch a kid.
Vignettes.
Vignettes,
Yeah, that scene really got to me, too.
Oh, yeah, the kids. Like, you're letting him get away, you idiots.
Yeah, and just the fact that he goes on, it's so strange to me that he has this tirade where he really implicates the crew, because he doesn't want to go murder he doesn't want to go do this job or whatever in this house. And they're like, well, they basically call him out on it. They're like, what, are you afraid to hit a nice suburban house? And like, after the whole thing, he ends up killing the kid. And that's not even what bothers him. He's very nonchalant about it as he's smothering the kid and finishing the conversation. Like that was another moment that, like, that's really funny to me. But it's like, it goes to show how hard this movie's going to isolate you, right? Mm-hmm. Though, to its credit, in the opening scene, you know exactly what you're getting into. They're not sneaking up on you with that.
The first 2 scenes are just that. There's the murder, and then him immediately after explaining in what's a pretty comical way how to sink a body in water, right?
It's interesting that how, like, people can be dehumanized by just being these objects on a screen. And, like, I think that's all the victims were to the crew. It's just like, oh, they're like a character in our movie, right? So, and I think there's that kind of vicarious thing going on now with, like, reality television and the news and stuff. So it's maybe not what they were going for, but it's just a similar thread, I guess.
Yeah,
and that's kind of something that's exactly, even though we kind of touched on it, I don't know that this movie had any particular point, but it seems to be such fertile ground for your own thought to come. So I would definitely suggest it to anybody who has any interest in writing or their own comedy, because I feel like even if you don't like the movie, it's gonna open up some thoughts in your head or plant a couple seeds that were never there before that would definitely be really valuable.
It'll leave its impression.
All right, and
Man Bites Dog.
that's it.
Mind blown.